What is going on, guys? Stefan here with you, S&E's Garage. Today we're going to be digging into this 2016 Kia Optima with the 2.4 liter Theta engine. So this car presents to us with an intermittent check engine light. Right now the light is not on, but it is throwing a P200A code. The code is in stored memory or history memory, and it comes on and off. And the customer wanted to go ahead and, fix that. So I do have a detailed video on my channel. I'm gonna go ahead and link that below on just exactly how you diagnose that problem. I'm not gonna bore you by doing it again. Like I said, I will link that down below. But what we came to the conclusion of here is we either have a problem with the VCM motor or the flaps inside of the intake manifold itself are gummed up and sticking intermittently. Now, I gave the customer a couple of different options. I told him, we can try to throw a VCM motor at it, which is this guy here. I do have a video on replacing that. Again, that'll be linked below. Or we can go ahead and replace the whole intake manifold, and the manifold will come with a new VCM motor on it. And what doing it this way will do is we'll be killing two stones with one bird here. Or two birds with one stone. I said that funny. But anyhow, what this is gonna do, we're gonna get a new VCM motor. All of the flaps inside of this intake, which you can see here, are going to be nice and clean and new. And it's going to come with new seals. So here is our throttle body seal, and here is our intake manifold gasket or seal. Now this is going to be part number 28310-2GGA0. The part number for Hyundai and for Kia is exactly the same. So if you have a Sonata or a Santa Fe or a Tucson or an Optima or whatever other Hyundai or Kia uses this 2.4 liter engine, it's gonna be that part number. So this will work for all of those cars. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna set you up on the tripod, and we're gonna go ahead and start tearing this down and remove and replace this intake manifold. Now you'll see here, we've already gone ahead and moved the engine cover off to the side. You just pull straight up, it comes right off. These are your grommets here, 1, 2, 3, 4. You just lift straight up, it will come right off. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go ahead, I like to get this wire harness out of the way, so we're just gonna start unplugging things. You have your injector driver here, your knock sensor, you have wiring here that goes down to the alternator and the air conditioning compressor. We're just gonna get all of this out of the way, and then we're gonna go ahead and start taking off the air dam and everything. And before we actually remove the manifold, we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get a blowgun or a vacuum or something of the sort. And we wanna clean as much of the debris out of here as we can. That way, when we do pull this off, none of that falls into the engine. So let's go ahead, set you up on a time lapse. I'm just gonna start disconnecting some stuff, and then when I'm at a point where I think you need to see what I'm doing, we'll put you back on video. All right, guys, so we went ahead and got this wire harness as much off of the intake manifold as need be. I'm not gonna bother disconnecting the air conditioning compressor or the alternator because that's really not in the way. And I'm also not going to unplug the throttle body because we are not taking the throttle body off with the intake manifold. I have a trick for that. We leave the throttle body in the car. That way we don't have to drain the coolant because that's just more work, and we don't really like doing more work when we don't have to. So what we're gonna go ahead and do now, I already disconnected the vacuum line here, going to the PCV hose. We're gonna go ahead and pull this intake snorkel from the air box and the throttle body. I'm not even gonna disconnect the hose. I'm just gonna set it aside, lay it on top of the engine, and then we're gonna go ahead and take our four bolts that hold the throttle body in and pull it off to the side. So what you're gonna see here is this throttle body is disconnected from the intake manifold, and the coolant hoses going to it are still connected, so we don't have anything to worry about there. So what we're gonna do now is ordinarily under this intake manifold, there are a couple of bolts that we need to remove, but if you listen here, somebody's already been in here, whether this thing had an engine replacement or what have you. They didn't put those bolts back in, shame on them. So that's that's less work that we have to do. But we're gonna go ahead now, we're gonna disconnect these vacuum hoses here and here. This is the purge valve that goes back to your fuel tank. We're just gonna go ahead and disconnect it from the manifold here, and then we're gonna disconnect this vacuum hose from the manifold here. We're gonna leave the purge valve in the engine so we don't have to unplug that. And then we can go ahead and start removing the various 12mm nuts and bolts around the intake. There's going to be one down there, one here, one down here, one there, and then there's going to be one hiding behind all this garbage. So let's go ahead, start taking this apart. I'm going to time lapse you, and then when we get to a point that we're going to remove the intake, we will show you. One other thing that you will need to do is unbolt this bracket here from the manifold as well. That way this isn't holding it in when you try to remove it. All right, so the easiest way to remove this bracket here is going to be to go ahead and disconnect the knock sensor from the bracket so you can get to this 10mm bolt here. So you'll see we just pulled that connector off. You're literally just gonna use a little pick and you're gonna push down on this little release here, this little tab on it, and you're gonna slide that right off of the bracket. So that's off, this is all off, this is all off, everything here is disconnected. We can now go ahead and grab our vacuum, like I said, clean as much of this dirt up as we can, and then we'll go ahead and pull the intake manifold off. Okay, now we can go ahead and get our 12mm ratchet, socket, and extension, or in our case, we're going to be using an impact gun, and we can go ahead and start removing the intake manifold. Now, I did just pull the dipstick out of the way. It's going to give us access to this nut here. You just want to be very careful not to drop these because it's a pain in the neck if you do. Now, like I said, ordinarily there is a bracket under here that would need to be removed, but somebody was lazy and never reinstalled them. So I'm just gonna go ahead and grab a magnet and get those two bolts. Okay. Now, make believe we remove those bolts, and you can now see that your intake manifold is loose. And with a little persuasion, will come up and out. Like so. Now, there are a few things going on here that, as a technician and a professional technician at that, kind of irk me, because I can 100% tell that somebody's been in here, and I'm going to show you. There's a couple of reasons. Number one, like I said, these two bolts are missing, gone, nowhere to be found. That's not good because that helps support the intake manifold. Number two, the fuel injector silencer is gone, nowhere to be found. That is very important, especially if you don't like the noise, vibration, and harshness caused by GDI engines. And number three, the separator plates that are supposed to be here on all of these intake ports are, again, missing, which, again, I've done hundreds of these engines, and I always take the time to do them right, and it bothers me that some people don't take that time. So we're just gonna go ahead and clean this up a little bit, and we'll go ahead and get ready to throw the new intake on. All right, guys, so off camera, we just went ahead, swapped these vacuum hoses over to the new manifold. We went ahead and swapped our MAP sensor, manifold absolute pressure. We swapped that over, and we went ahead and swapped over our PCV vacuum hose. So we are now ready to go ahead and slide this new intake manifold on. One thing that I did just want to bring to your attention is why GDI services are so important. I just called this customer and I did confirm with them that this engine has been replaced, maybe got 30 or 40,000 miles on it. And I just want you to take a look into those intake ports. Low mileage, and they are already gummed up. It's actually really easy to see the carbon because, like I said before, somebody didn't put the separator plates back in. But do your GDI services and prevent this from happening. I'm gonna talk to them about that. They didn't want to go ahead and do a full cleaning right now, but we might end up having to pull this back apart and replace those ports. They're the separators that are missing, so we will discuss that at that time. But do your GDI services, it'll help prevent this from even happening in the first place. Alright guys, so we have our intake manifold loosely installed here. I just went ahead and started all of the bolts by hand, and I actually found a couple of bolts that I had laying around. I had to cut them to fit, but I was able to put 2 bolts in the bracket there underneath the manifold. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is we're just going to snug all of these bolts down on the top here, and then we're going to go ahead and get underneath and tighten those up. I like to start from the center here and work my way out. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead underneath and I'm going to tighten the bracket up. Now, the dealer that did the engine also left the bolts that go to the engine block loose, so we have to tighten them up as well. I just love doing other people's jobs because they left the silencer out. You can actually see where they go. Okay, so now the job that the dealer started is finished, and our intake manifold is in nice and tight, so we can go ahead and get our ratchet out of here. Now we can start rewiring the car and install the throttle body. Right now we are just loosely threading the throttle body in now. Don't want to kill this, just snug it up. Okay. Now we can go ahead and reinstall our wire harness. We're just going to start plugging some stuff in. We're going to go ahead, wipe our dipstick off, stick it back in, and plugging things in as we go. Do our PCV hose. There we go. install our fuel rail connector bracket. Okay. Go ahead and plug in our fuel rail. We can go ahead and connect our knock sensor back to the bracket here. Okay, plug that in. And we're just gonna go ahead and follow our harness here, start plugging things in. We can plug in the variable charge motion actuator. Okay, we can plug in our map sensor. And if for some reason you unplugged your throttle body, you can plug that in now as well. Now we're going to go ahead and reconnect our vacuum hoses that we disconnected in the beginning. Okay, and then you have a little 8mm plastic bolt here that you have to thread into the manifold. It's going to go on like that. Just going to go ahead and secure our clamps. And then we're going to make one more quick round around here, make sure everything's plugged in. We never disconnected the purge valve, that's still plugged in. That's routed correctly, routed correctly, routed correctly. I didn't unplug anything down there. We're good to go. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and reinstall our air cleaner assembly hose, like so. Our air cleaner back in. Okay, and now what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and clear the codes, and we're going to reset the engine adaptives, and we're going to go take it for a ride. All right, guys, we went ahead and reset those adaptive values. We got everything back together. Let's give it a test start. And you'll notice that was a hard start because we went ahead and reset those adaptive values. So we're just gonna go ahead, we're gonna let it idle for a little bit, and then we'll take it for a ride. All right, guys, and that is gonna be it for this video. We went ahead and replaced this intake manifold, cleared the codes, reset the adaptive values, and we just went ahead and took it for a ride. And everything's good. We got no check engine light. It's performing as it should, and everything's good in the world with this Kia, at least until its engine blows up again. If this video helped you, please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.